Hello, this is Insha Waziri for ThePrint, reporting to you from the Jaipur Literature Festival. Today we have author and poet and translator Ranjit Hoskote with us. Thank you so much for doing this, sir. So I think my first question is based on the assumption that fewer people read. And we are drifting away from the written word. So as a writer, does it worry you that our vocabulary pool is shrinking in young people? And if so, how will people enlarge their vocabulary if they don't read?
Insha, actually, I have a sense, based on empirical evidence, that the reading habit is back with a bang. There was a marvelous article that Anant Padmanabhan just published, the CEO of HarperCollins India, where he talks about how sales for books in general are up in India, and for fiction particularly. This is not the case in Europe, where it's flattening out. But that's because we have a completely different scenario here. We have every year more and more people coming into literacy, into higher education, and into the reading habit. Whatever they read on, it may be the printed book, it may be the touch screen, it could be the medium is not so relevant. I think the important thing is that people are actually reading. And about vocabulary, I'm interested in how new vocabularies are being created by young people. Language is not static. No language is static. So what excites me is that there might be a short-term, temporary kind of slang, but also new contributions to our vocabulary.
So adding onto the contributions to our vocabulary, the dictionary.com this year added the term 6-7 to its list of words. Do you think that we can use these slangs and newer words to write poetry with?
My only question there would be, how long will these last? So you could have poetry that speaks to the moment and uses these terms, but they may well become obsolete in 5 years. But let's remember that there's so much in Shakespeare that was totally new for his period. These were words that people first heard at the Globe Theatre. They hadn't been there before, and now we use them.
So what do you think of these words being used as Instagram poetry and the whole hashtag micro poetry trend that's going on? Do you think it has breathed life into poetry, especially for the younger audience?
I think it's definitely invited a whole new and young audience into poetry. Also, we tend to think of micro poetry or flash fiction as new forms. But actually, they are rather ancient. They have a pedigree of their own. I mean, the haiku is micro poetry.
But what about hashtag poetry, where people are just doing it all on Instagram, and it's just, as a poet, do you recognize it as a form of poetry, or is that just a social media trend for you?
I tend to think both as a poet and an anthropologist. So as an anthropologist, I find this very interesting as a trend. It speaks to a new kind of consciousness and sensibility. As a poet, I would be interested in how long this will endure and what its long-term contribution might be.
Do you enjoy reading any of the micro poetry?
Every now and again something leaps out and speaks to you, because let's face it, 80% of everything, Sturgeon's law, is likely to be not great. But there's always a 20% that really leaps out off the page, off the screen.
That's true. So you're on a session about Jane Austen. That's the one I'm really looking forward to. So can we talk about what her impact is in the Indian context, maybe even?
Sure. For me, there's 2 points of entry there. One is the fact that so much that goes on in the Jane Austen universe is relevant to our kind of social structure. And you're thinking, wow, how does Georgian England remain relevant to 21st century India? But I think there are familial structures, there are forms of social negotiation that are true of transitional societies.
But do you think that we need to keep retelling her stories in newer methods so that they appeal to the masses, or is she doing it all on her own?
I think you need to re-narrate everything, whether it's the epics or Jane Austen or anybody else. And here I would tend to think, as Edward Said did, that there's a great deal that's excluded from the Jane Austen universe. I mean, you see these very pleasant home counties and all these people leading easeful lives. But only in hints do you learn that the fortunes that support this lifestyle are coming from slave plantations in the Caribbean. So there's an entire history of colonialism and empire that supports this world, but you don't see it in the novels. So as people who live here, from our kind of perspective, we need to be very aware of this. We can't just take Jane Austen on board as, hey, this is marvelous English literature. We have to look at it from our own post-colonial perspective. We have to look at the costs that were exacted on our countries in the global south. And I've always found it useful to look at who the contemporaries of some of these figures are. Like when I think of Ghalib, I say, wow, Whitman was his contemporary. Or when I think of Mir, I say, Schiller was his contemporary. How is it that we know so much more about European and North American poets than about our own people here?
Yeah.
So we should situate Jane Austen in our world.
Who would you think is the equivalent of Jane Austen?
That being said, I can't immediately think of anyone, but it's a worthwhile project. I think we have to, Deepesh Chakravarti talks about domesticating Europe. This is how we need to respond to this fiction. We have to make it our own.
We have to make it our own,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Well, thank you,
It's been a
Insha.
pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much. ThePrint is a digital partner for the Jaipur Literature Festival. Thank you.